Welcome into the studio. Today I'm going to be doing this very cute squirrel. This is my finished drawing in pastels on grey, dark grey pastel mat. I'm also going to be doing that bokeh background, that circular bokeh background. I don't do those myself, but I know a lot of people want to see how I do those to create that photographic appearance and that shallow depth of field. So let's get started and see exactly how I did it. Okay, so that's enough for the branch. Let's take a look at the background now. I'm using my scrap piece of paper again just to test my colours on there and check it. And you really need it to be the same colour paper for this to work. You see, you can get it quite accurate. It doesn't need to be perfect. If this squirrel, or when I took the photograph, was in a slightly different setting, colours would be slightly different. But I'm just roughly getting it right, because sometimes your eye plays tricks on you, especially if you're mixing it on white paper as I am. And I know when I'm checking against my grey Pastelmat paper, that scrap paper, I know this is really close, whether it looks a bit light or dark at the moment or not. I know it's quite close. So you can see with pans I like to use small circular motions. That helps to get it smooth. And with backgrounds you can put a bit more down, because we're not really going to be building many layers of detail, well, no detail at all really on the background. So when you put more pastel down, whether it's PanPastel or a pastel stick or pencil, it becomes smoother on the surface, so you get a better, smoother transition. Now normally if I was doing this I wouldn't put those circles in. I personally think they look a little bit artificial, that bokeh camera effect when they circular like this. I would probably just have a transition from the blue top left to the green and just make that fade one into the other. Now I've checked I got a clean finger and I'm just rubbing that into the surface of the paper. That helps to get it down into the tooth a bit more, which will give me, as I said, a bit of a smoother transition. I've just added a bit of very light blue to the mix that I've already got. I don't mind it at all going slightly over the edge of the squirrel, and in fact that's what I want, because that means I can then put the squirrel over the top of this. Okay, with pastels we can do that no problem at all. So you can see circular motions, getting that nice smoothness. And you can see how easy it is to create that bokeh effect, that blur, using pan pastels. Just mixing it, using that paper as my mixing palette. So that's why I said it's very, very similar. If you're used to doing painting, traditional painting, whether it's oils or acrylics and mixing, this will feel really, you'll be really at home doing it like this. Okay, now I don't have to make this exactly the same as the reference. I've got my own artistic license. If I want to change things a little bit, perhaps make something a bit more dark or bluer or lighter, I can do that. But for this demo I'm going to keep it fairly accurate. So you see I'm building the layer up on top, adding a bit more to it. That's making it look even softer and smoother. And I'm going to go on top of this again eventually, the background, to make it even more realistic. So once again, this is the basic underlayer for the background. I'm just going to guess roughly the shape here for now. I'll show you a little tool I'll use later on to get it more accurate. So I want it fairly circular, like the photo. Not worried if it goes over areas of the squirrel. As I said, we can easily go over the top of it, and if I went a bit thick over the squirrel and I wanted a purer colour to go over, I could just use an eraser and remove the pastel that way. You see, just roughly get in this circular. Now the drawing took me around about 5.5 hours to complete, so I'm just going to speed up this. You've seen the technique. Speed it up, and as I change colour I'll slow it back down when I'm doing something a little bit different. Okay, so now I'm putting in this light green area. So same principle. I've got my green, I've added some white to it. Circular strokes again because we don't want any really hard edges. The hard edge I've got on the top of the squirrel's head with that blue to the green. I'm going to be going over the top of this, as I said, and I'll adjust all that to make sure I've got the background nice and soft. I don't want anything really hard edged because that will give it the appearance then that it's in focus back there and that it doesn't have that recession. So this whole reference photo really works because we've got that blur and, as I said, no hard edges in the background. So make this a bit lighter. See how easy it is with the pans to just blend it away, get it completely smooth. And then up here as well, we've got that bit of a line. I'm going to make sure that I don't line that up exactly with the squirrel's ear as I've got it on the reference photo. That's like an unfortunate thing that happened on the photo. You can see the two intersecting circles are really on the tip of the squirrel's ear. So I'll adjust that eventually, because I don't want things lining up like that. Even though it's actually how it turned out, it looks a bit contrived and fake. Now down here is a bit of blue, so I'll just lightly put that in, and that goes into the green as well. So I'll just very lightly put that on top, and that still keeps a bit of that light green circle underneath to give that effect we're seeing in the photo. Okay, so that's just about it for the background underlayer. I think I'll just touch up a couple of areas here. This could go a bit darker. So I'm just going to put just a little bit more PanPastel on top in a few areas. And then I think we'll start working to detail the branch up. Once that's in and I've got some nice darks in that mossy area, especially see the darks in that top left part of the mossy area. Once I've got those in, I'll be able to better assess if this background needs to be a bit darker in places or lighter in places. And that's where I can make those adjustments then before I put the squirrel in place. So I want to really put that on top of the background. Okay, before I work really any more with the squirrel and start detailing the edge, what I need to do is I'm going to use one of these soft tools. This is just a sponge, it's kind of like a finger size. And I'm going to get that background now exactly how I want it finished so that I can layer the squirrel itself on top. Okay, so I'm going to get my piece of paper here. Got my glassine paper protecting the branch that I've already done, and I'm still going to use my paper as a mixing palette. Now I could have done this background earlier on, but I'm just going to show you that you can even come back into it and work on it at this stage. So now I want it really nice and smooth, so I'm adding more pastel. Remember I said the more pastel you add, the smoother it gets. So I'm just freshening it all up. I want nice clean colours in the background. Slowly building up the layer. Don't want any really hard edges. Remember I said I want that to recede into the background. So a bit darker down here. I'll come over this then and redo the shape of that lighter circle on top of the head. Now to get it more accurate, you can get stencils and tools like this. All different. This one's got all different size circles on there, so I can use that. I can pick up some PanPastel, and you know, I'm going to get a really accurate circle out of it. So just make sure you go right to the edges, get it tucked right down into the edge. Don't want to put too much pastel down, and then once you've got the edges all right, then you can just blend away in the middle. So just hold the stencil in place. Get a bit more blue there, a little bit of white added to it. And if I think that's right, then I can just blend away from that edge and get a bit more of an accurate shape. Now obviously the edge will be too hard, so I'll have to soften that, blend that with my finger or with the soft tools. But don't be afraid to use things like stencils, especially if you're doing these circular bokeh backgrounds where you really want it to be, you know, fairly accurate circles. Don't have to be perfect, but quite accurate. And these stencils are obviously easy to just wipe off with a bit of microfiber cloth or a tissue once you've used it. So if you're doing different colors, make sure you give them a bit of a wipe. The thing is, get close to the edge like that. You've got to make sure the pastel's got to go into the edge to get your nice round shape. And then you can just lift it off, and there you go. So obviously, as I said, got the very hard edge on there, but that's nice and easy to soften off. You can just use your finger, or you can use a soft tool, anything like that. Just make sure your finger is quite clean if you're using that method. So you don't want to contaminate it with, you know, something, perhaps a green. If you've been blending the green with your fingers, you don't want to push that straight in. But see, it's quite easy to soften off, and then you've got a bit more of an accurate shape to it. Now it won't look correct until the squirrel is actually on top with the details. It won't fade into the background yet. For the next 5 or 6 minutes, I'm just going to let the video run now at real time. You can see I'm using a pastel stick here. Had a more accurate green. I wanted it to be nice vibrant colour but dark here. And that's something I didn't really have with a PanPastel, so I'm just putting the stick in like this, and I can use it with the PanPastels, and I'll blend this with my finger. But all I'm going to do for the next 3 or 4 minutes, I'm just going to let it run real time as I bring this video to an end, and then on the second video we can spend all that time really getting the textures, the fur texture and the details nice, and spend a lot of in-depth time just on the squirrel. So hope you've enjoyed part 1, and I'll see you all again on part 2. This is the time in the drawing where it's just refinement. 99% of it is done. Some edges I may want to soften like I'm doing now. I'm just using the pencil to soften that circular edge, just change the shape. Some areas I may want to increase the contrast on, but this is where all that gets done. So as I said, almost all of it is now finished. I put the reference photo out to the side, so I'm not looking at that much at all. I'm just looking at the drawing and seeing where I think improvements can be made. Now the final very fine details I'm putting in with a coloured pencil. Okay, so it's not black, it's a dark purple again, but you can see just a wispy haze. That's going to give the effect that I've got a lot more detail to do my pastel work than I really did. Okay, so I'm also going to use it to do the whiskers because they are super fine at this scale. Now if I'd used pastel pencils for this, it would have been way too thick. Would have looked very amateurish and been ruined right at the final hurdle. And we can sharpen coloured pencil, and any make would do or brand, it doesn't really matter, but we can sharpen it much more than we can a pastel pencil. So if we're doing small scale work like this and we need really fine details, that's when the coloured pencils right at the very end come into their own and finish it off nicely. Okay, so with those final touches, hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll end just by putting up a photo of the finished drawing under studio lighting taken with my digital SLR, so it always looks a bit more vibrant and detailed, of course, than a video camera. But I do hope you've enjoyed this one. Something different with that bokeh background, and we've got a lovely cute animal in there as well. See you all again very soon on the next video.